It's been nearly 2 years since I first reviewed the Daleks Master Plan, as part of a long-running ongoing look at the Daleks, and ordinarily that one review would have been it. And of course at the time I had little reason to think otherwise. It had already been over a decade since the last recovery of any missing episodes. The man who had orchestrated that recovery had spent most of that decade whinging about how woke Doctor Who had become, and it was becoming increasingly obvious how this idiotic blowhard had managed to lose episode 3 of the Web of Fear. So that avenue was closed. There was always the talk about private collections. In fact, I mentioned them in the original review, and I don't doubt the likes of Purves had their sources to know what's out there, but it always felt like a distant probability. Just a rumour to circle around forever, like the one about those episodes of Marco Polo in Iran, and hey, it certainly looks like we're going to be getting those back soon. Just something that would never come to any real fruition. So I, and probably most of the rest of you, had just accepted there would probably always be 97 missing episodes, and that was that. And then, of course, a few weeks ago, we got the news we had forgotten we were waiting for. 2 missing episodes returned by Film is Fabulous, and from a private collection no less. Admittedly, I'd always taken that to mean film collectors who knew perfectly well the value of what they had and weren't giving it back because they're bastards, whereas this was a recently deceased collector who had absolutely no interest in Doctor Who at all, and simply had these 6 episodes, 2 missing episodes from the Daleks Master Plan, episode 1, The Nightmare Begins, and episode 3, Devil's Planet, and 4 redundant prints from earlier stories, lying around gathering dust without him having the slightest idea of the value of what he had. Considering it was entirely plausible they could have just sat there and rotted after he died, that we have to recover them back in the archive is obviously an excellent outcome. The 2 Daleks Master Plan episodes, and possibly the 4 redundants, are cutting copies, which has opened up a hitherto undiscussed set of possibilities. Cutting copies are the name given to prints used for technical review, to see if there are any faults with a negative that required editing out before the sales prints would be struck. There have in fact been recoveries of cutting copies before. The 4 existing episodes of The Ice Warriors were found in a BBC property in the late 80s, and were labelled as cutting copies. Now, the precise use of these is unknown, and indeed the same can be said for why they only turn up for some episodes. A comparison with the off-air audios revealed that the cutting copies for the Ice Warriors were in fact uncut, so perhaps these episodes had no faults found and they were forgotten, while the now missing episodes did need to be edited and therefore were whisked away and then later junked. Likewise for these Master Plan episodes, could they have been left behind with no edits needed to be easily snatched by a collector? It's all conjecture, of course, and one suspects that if there was a huge library of cutting copies of every missing episode around somewhere, then we've found more than 6 episodes over the last nearly 50 years. But it's interesting to think that the foreign bicycling chains and print groups that so many have brilliantly and meticulously stitched together over the years could only be part of the story and not the end of it. As for Master Plan, it was confirmed by Paul Venezis that the existing prints of episodes 5 and 10 are indeed the audition prints that have been sent to Australia, while obviously the newly found prints of episodes 1 and 3 are the cutting copies, with the origin of the print of episode 2 not determinable at the moment. This does rather blow apart my theory from my original review. There was only one set of prints, but hey, one to go abroad and a set of cutting copies, that's close enough. Now I could speculate as for what survived from these 2 sets, how they might have been split up, why did the episodes we have survived, what happened to episode 4 after Bleep had finished with it, and what set that came from. But they're all questions for which we have no real answers, and we probably never will. It does, however, provide hope that there might be more from this story out there somewhere from either set, and, well, in that case only time will tell. As for the episodes themselves, how do they stack up and do they change my overall views of the story? Well, to answer the first question, very well I think. They show off that Douglas Camfield was an excellent director who knew how to line up a shot, whether to emphasise menace or to give a sense of scale or to make things seem tight and suspenseful. But there are also the smaller moments that are impossible to ever reconstruct about the episodes themselves, which I think are the thing to really appreciate when we get recoveries like this. Small moments in the directing, for instance, such as Katarina examining in curious wonder the controls of the spar, controls which she would tragically use to sacrifice herself not long after. And other moments, such as the subtleties of Hartnell's performance, here it is most confident in the role before his health and therefore his prowess began to decline. In fact, it's his interactions with Adrienne Hill that I think are the shining moments of these 2 episodes. Hartnell beautifully playing the mentor role, genuinely interested in her development and proud of how quickly she's learning, and Hill, with her role in these episodes more prominent than it was in episode 2, is able to portray Katarina very effectively as curious and observant, still a long way from being able to keep up with what she's seeing, but learning effectively. I'll get to all this in a moment. We get to see a few more bits of Mavic Chen in episode 3, and Stoney and Camfield brilliantly pull off Zephon's death scene, Chen slipping into the background with a smirk, but Camfield emphasising the real power being with the Daleks and the way it's shot and staged. It was also great to see scenes that were frankly tedious on the reconstruction come to life. The people in space control, or whatever it was on Earth in episode 1, felt like an annoying waste of time on the reconstruction, just two people commenting on minor events before never turning up again, but with the performances to see, allowing us to see these different reactions and all the subtleties of them, and therefore build up Chen's reputation and to give life to his Earth, it works so much better than I ever thought it would do. Equally, the prison planet stuff in episode 3 was dull and interesting on the reconstruction, and while it still was clearly just set up so they can kill Katarina, having the vigils brings more life to it, allows us to see these desperate people who have violent savagery as their only means of survival. Letting us see, rather than hear, adds so much to scenes like this. Overall, having these episodes back is a joy. It really brings so much more life to the story, and obviously the improvement over the reconstructions just goes without saying. As for whether these episodes changed my opinion of the story, well, not really, I'm afraid. A lot of it is that most of my problems were mostly geared towards the later parts of the story, where it essentially grinds to a halt, and with episodes 6 to 10 being mostly superfluous, and obviously recovering these earlier episodes doesn't make much of a difference there. I will say that my accusation of these earlier episodes not being paced well is something I will now withdraw as watching the actual episodes. The pacing seems far better than it ever did on the reconstructions, and the first 3 episodes flow together as actually quite a well-paced and cohesive unit. But the story still feels unfocused, that despite now having 3 full episodes in a row, it doesn't really feel like the story is actually moving all that much. The prison stuff may be better now, but it's still just a plot device so they can kill Katarina. Speaking of which, one of my biggest criticisms in the original view was the waste of the character of Katarina and how they were frankly cowards when it came to her, and the recovery of these episodes only highlights that criticism. Katarina comes across as someone who's learning and growing in every moment. In every action she takes and moment she experiences, discovering something new about this strange world and adding to her experiences. She lets the Doctor take the lead because she trusts him and believes in him, and he in turn sees her potential and more he can teach her. It's in these recovered episodes we see the wonderful chemistry between Hartnell and Hill, leagues above anything he had with Jackie Lane, for instance, and just makes you see what a fascinating character filled with potential this was. And they had no interest in trying to make it work, and these episodes highlight what a mistake that was. Camfield orchestrates a beautiful shot as the Doctor is having a moan at Stephen for asking too many questions, cutting to Katarina exploring and looking at her surroundings. Beyond her understanding for the moment, but we believe from that moment that it may not be beyond her for long. How they cut the character short was cowardice. I was certain of that 2 years ago, and I'm even more certain of it now. So these episodes don't overall change my view of the story, and I see no reason to change from the final score I gave it 2 years ago, but that in no way minimises my joy at having these episodes back. This is the first time I've personally been able to experience a return like this when a previously reconstructed episode has come to life. I mean, yeah, I was a fan in 2013. I had seen episode 3 of The Enemy of the World and episode 1 of The Web of Fear, so completing, and near completing respectively, those stories was a big deal, but it's not as if I'd ever sat down and watched the reconstructions before. They were an entirely new experiences for me. While here, it's taking something I'd previously only had a tantalising glimpse of, and seen it come to life before me. It's wonderful, frankly, and it's over a decade of interest in missing episodes paying off. A golden moment I thought there was a good chance would never happen, and my gratitude that it has happened cannot be overstated.